to keep the commercial and sales aspects of it going. I'm not really too concerned about that. We will manage that. That's not my central concern at all. I've been full-time on it 3.5 years now, and we have made substantial progress. I mean, the DFT have been forced into commissioning about 5 independent pieces of road safety research as the results of questions that we've been asking. I mean, there is a pressure build-up here, and of course the public is progressively hearing an alternative view of all this. And you know, what the Safe Speed campaign calls for is not some radical free-for-all where drivers aren't to be regulated or controlled, even the nutters. What we're really calling for is the sort of road safety policies that we had 20 years ago that were actually delivering the safest roads in the world and an ongoing improvement. Now, that's not too radical, really. We're saying that this new wave of speed kills road safety is fatally flawed, fundamentally flawed. It's based on incomplete beliefs, incomplete analysis, and failure to look at road safety as a complete system, which of course is something that we have to do.
Paul Smith with me from the Safe Speed Road Safety Campaign. We're talking about thoughts currently in the air from the government about retrofitting also as an option, equipment on your car that would restrict the vehicle exceeding a particular speed in certain areas. Whilst on the face of it, it seems, yes, quite logical. The reality? Up for discussion, but also speed cameras and how we can utilise the statistics that are in front of us to give us a clearer image of what's really going on. Martin's in Leeds, going to speak to you in just a minute, Martin, because Sue called first off, and she's in London, southwest London. Hello, Sue.
Hello there, Mike. It's lovely to hear your dulcet tones again.
Oh, we're very kind.
Yes,
it's been very, very busy out there on the fruit lorry, you know, but I decided to give it up for the summer.
Well, good. I'm delighted.
It's a long time since I've spoken to you. We were talking with Pauline earlier on tonight, and she was telling me about how she's her quest to find a man.
Yes.
And I seem to recall that you and I spoke on a programme called Midnight Encounters, didn't we?
Did we? No, I don't think so, because I have no intention of encountering anybody. I'm a loner.
Are you?
Yes, so it wasn't me, it was 10 other people.
I'm also a loner, and I had an invite to join the loners.
You and I should get together,
yes.
Be alone together.
But you know, I got an invite to go to the loners' ball, but 99% of us weren't interested.
Didn't turn up, yeah.
No. So you've got Paul Smith all to yourself.
Yes, hello Paul.
Hi.
I'm not actually a driver. However, I would just like to make a point, bearing in mind that I believe that a fair proportion of accidents are caused by younger drivers, dare I say, particularly young men. We all know that, when you're young, you're immortal, and I think a sense of responsibility comes more with as you get older, as does concern for others. Now, it's my feeling that if there was a sort of a lower age limit, that this might have an effect on the number of accidents caused, and I would propose an age of 25.
Well, that's interesting you should say that, Sue. But before you respond, Paul, I noticed that you're an advanced driver.
Uh-huh.
I was just wondering if what Sue says and the information that's come through your experience as an advanced driver couldn't be two major contributions if we adopted those for most driving experiences.
The age thing is difficult. We've got to find the right balance. There are two reasons that young drivers have high accident rates. One is, as Sue was describing, sense of immortality, lack of appreciation of the responsibilities. The other reason is inexperience. And if we move the goalpost to 25, we'll have 25-year-old inexperienced drivers. We don't sort of manage to kill the problem off completely. We've got rid of half of it, maybe a third of it. We should address these issues. We've actually got about under 21, about 3% of the drivers in the traffic are under 21, and they're responsible for about 20% of the accidents. So, I mean, there's a really, really serious issue here and an opportunity.
I wondered, you see, if they went through a test scenario that embraced advanced driving techniques, if that would alter their attitude, because they would then become aware of speeds and adhesion to the road surface beyond certain limits and things like that.
I think that the sort of advanced driving things that we would want to communicate would be how to observe, how to recognise risk, how to respond to risk, how to minimise risk. It's not so much about car handling techniques, it's much more about the mental skills. Those things are good. They're difficult to apply to drivers that have no experience, and we can talk about the track that people follow as they gradually gain experience as drivers, because going from being a new driver to a driver of 10 years experience, your risk falls by a factor of about 5 to 1. I mean, you're about 20% of the risk after 10 years. And if we could help people develop those skills a little bit more quickly, then the risk would fall away more quickly. That would be good.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure, why not?
This might sound crazy. For younger people who obviously want to drive, couldn't there be a sort of driving track, particularly for people who are able, so that they can drive, but are not endangering others? A sort of special place where they can go and just drive, and they can get experience in driving. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
We're going to take a pause there, so Sue, if you could just hang on to that, and we'll come back to you, Paul. In the meantime, just let me remind you, this is talkSPORT. I'm Mike Allen. Good morning. Be part of the programme. Give me a call on 08 704 20 20 20. It's Mike Allen for Mike Mendoza on talkSPORT on 1089 and 1053 AM.
1089 and 1053 AM.
This is outrageous.
Around the world.
Oh, il a trajectoire normale.
Around the clock.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
From the Sky News Centre. talkSPORT on the Hour News.
The top stories from the Sky News Centre at 3.
On 1089 and 1053 AM. talkSPORT.
That's slightly urban landscape dangerous, isn't it, really? People don't play that sort of music when they're picking cucumbers. We were talking earlier on this evening about the preponderance of thought that's in support of allotments. People getting in touch with their soil. But how safe is it? No, really, you put in months of work. I mean, it was a rubbish plot you inherited, or maybe at last, after years of waiting, you got on the council list and they said, here it is, and you went and looked at it and you thought, this is going to cost a fortune, and you were right. And then, just a few days before the crop's due, somebody comes along with a bucket and spade and steals it. Did it happen to you? I'd like to talk to you about allotments. And also, 3 words: grey, female, loaded. Older women are about to become more attractive because most of Britain's millionaires will soon be women in their mid-50s, according to a forecast. How will this alter the male-female relationship? Because you'd like to impress her with your butch manliness and buy dinner, and she doesn't want to eat the sort of trash that you can afford. We'll go into this a little deeper. Delighted to say at 3:30, Chris Needs will be with us. He's written a book on the New York Dolls called Trash, The New York Dolls Complete. A copy of the book will be won tonight after the chat with Chris Needs. I think you'll find this terribly interesting because it is about the time when glam rock was starting to come out through the rafters in New York and also the UK. But joining us and making a great guest, actually, should be up with a round of applause, is Paul Smith, the founder of Safe Speed Road Safety Campaign. Paul, I've got a guy called Martin who's on, have a little chat about speed camera story. I'd love it if you could be part of that. And then I would like to talk to you about something you mentioned earlier, a return to the excellent road safety policies that gave us in the UK the safest road in the world in the first place. Is that all okay? We can do
Terrific.
that? Okay. Hello, Martin in Leeds. Hang on a minute, I haven't done something. Now I've done it. It's working. Yes. Come on, darling. There we are. I can start a truck quicker than I can do this. Hello, Martin. Gotcha.
Hello there.
Gotcha.
Hiya.
Well, we're all going well here. Did you get caught by the cameras?
Yeah, I'm an HGV driver at 44 tons now. Several weeks ago, same just happened to me. I've just got flashed on a speed camera. It's a road I've been using for years. Now, I know the speed limit is 40 miles per hour on it, But, I mean, most wagon drivers do travel up there at 50 mile an hour because it's such a really, really big, wide, open, single carriageway road. Early hours of the morning, there's never anything about, no road junctions whatsoever. This morning, doing about 46, 47 miles per hour, the camera flashed me. But it's never flashed me the previous times. So, I mean, obviously this is a deliberate attempt again to try and catch HGV drivers out again.
You got some thoughts on that, Paul?
Well, unfortunately, there is a great deal of this about. People don't realise, but on single carriageway national speed limit roads where everybody else is allowed to go 60, well, not quite everybody else, heavy goods vehicles are limited to 40 miles an hour. So the upper stretches of the A1, where it's a very high specification single carriageway road, good for 60. The speed limit for heavy goods vehicles is 40 miles an hour. Now, it might be all right to have HGVs limited to 40 miles an hour on narrow country roads, B roads and the like, but it isn't sensible at all to have them limited to 40 miles an hour on trunk routes that might be single carriageway.
Can I just say something while you're on that point?
Do, please.
Right. I totally agree with what you're saying. On little B roads, 40 mile an hour, if you can even do 40 mile an hour on the little B roads.
Absolutely.
But talking about big open carriageways, now, if you're an HGV driver, you stick at 50 miles per hour on these big carriageways, the majority of cars will sit behind you, happy as Larry.
Yep.
You'll stick to 40 miles per hour, and everybody will go to great lengths, and they'll do anything so dangerous to try and get past you.
Yep.
And that's my point on the big carriageways.
Couldn't agree more. It's happening all over the country, and of course, as the greedy camera partnerships have ramped up enforcement of that speed limit, more and more heavy goods vehicle drivers have responded because they fear for their licences by slowing down to 40 in these circumstances. They create a rolling roadblock. They cause considerable frustration for following traffic, and suicidal overtakes are becoming much more commonplace. What sort of road safety policy is that?
It's nothing. I think it's totally stupid how they're just trying to get HGV drivers, catch them out left, right and centre now.
Yes, absolutely.
Whilst you're on the line, Martin, I just want to ask a question of Paul, which might be of a relevance to yourself.
Right.
Listening to Martin's situation, I sort of got the impression that he's been up this stretch of road before.
Yeah.
And on this particular night, the camera is activated.
Yeah.
Now, that sounds a little strange, because we're familiar with the story that the old-style Gatto cameras have replacement filming, and they can flash, but there's no image being captured. Do they alter the trigger point of these cameras from time to time? Like sometimes they will fire at, let's assume it's a 30 limit, they will fire at, say, 33 or 32 or whatever, and then alter it to 35 at other times?
Of the fixed-speed cameras, there's about 4 times as many boxes as there are cameras. So mostly you're passing empty boxes. Sometimes there's a dummy flash unit in there, but mostly you're passing empty boxes. They move the cameras around.
So on Tuesday, Martin could have gone past there in his rig, and there was not a unit installed.
Exactly, an empty box.
How does that explain the situation, Martin?
Well, that could explain it rather well, because there's several times a week I've gone up the same stretch of road, and because it's been night time, early hours at morning, I've stuck to 50 mile an hour, there's not a soul in sight, and I've never once been flashed in a space of, it's got to be 5, 6, 7 years, and on the specific morning, I was coming down about 6:30 in the morning, on my way back home, and at 46, 47 miles per hour it flashed.
Yeah.
It sounds as if Paul's lifted the lid on the problem here. They've just been moving their camera stock about.
But the other issue, of course, is that if you are going to enforce on these roads where there are different speed limits for different vehicle types, 60 miles an hour for cars, 40 miles an hour for HGVs, 50 miles an hour for some vans, there needs to be some sort of vehicle type discriminator associated with the camera.
I totally agree with that, yeah.
Yeah, they do have vehicle type discriminators. There's an issue about whether they are correctly type approved in accordance with the Home Office regulations. It's quite a grey area, actually, and needs to be challenged in court. But not only can they move cameras around, they can move vehicle type discriminators around, install them. So you might find that a camera that's been active for cars for the last 5 years suddenly also becomes active for HGVs because it can distinguish the vehicle type.
I wish you well. Thanks for the call, Martin. If you'd like to be part of the programme, it's terrific. We've got Paul Smith here. I haven't said Paul Smith so often since I went to a suit sale. Have you ever bought one of Paul Smith's shirts? Or
Certainly
something?
not. Horrible man.
You serious?
No.
He's a big fan of the show.
Yeah.
He's suddenly decided to cancel his sale. The number to be part of this is 08704 20 20 20. Or you can approach through the website at talksport.net, or you can text 81089. So let's go back to this inescapable conclusion that we should urgently return to the excellent road safety policies, your words, I believe, that gave us in the UK the safest roads in the world in the first place.
Yeah.
And then you conclude that sentence by saying, far from saving lives, speed cameras are a dangerous distraction. Yeah. Well, I would go along with that, because when you're driving, you're constantly looking for the little box.
Yeah. Well, that's the experience of drivers, isn't it? I mean, we know none of us like speed cameras as drivers. Some of us are prepared to suspend our disbelief on the basis of information that seems quite sound coming out of government. They say these things are saving lives, and motorists all around the country have gone, well, if it saves lives, I suppose I ought to put up with it. Well, it doesn't save lives. The statistics that they've been using have been horribly flawed and misinterpreted and misunderstood. And the reason that that's happened is because they've got this belief going that this must work. If vehicles are going slower, they must not crash as hard. And they're trying to see road safety as a problem in physics, when actually that's completely wrong, because we don't depend on the physics. The physics doesn't get a chance to bite until a road user makes mistakes. And the mistakes aren't that commonplace because we don't have that many accidents. The other thing that's really interesting, another flaw in the government case, we've seen this advert on TV where they say they've got a child that recovers on the road. They say, if you hit me at 30, there's a 20% chance that I'll die. If you hit me at 40, there's an 80% chance that I'll die. Those figures are just about right. They're accurate figures. So you might think, oh my God, well, obviously, if we want to save all those children, we've got to have people sticking to the speed limit like glue. Well, it's not true. And we know immediately by looking at national road accident statistics that it can't possibly be true. And the way that works is, if you look at built-up areas, the most recent year on record, 2004, for which we have complete data, there were 14,000 child pedestrians recorded as injured and 58 recorded as killed in built-up areas. This is where speed limits are 30 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour. We're not killing 20%, which we would be if we were hitting them routinely at 30 miles an hour. We're not killing 10%. We're not killing even 1%. The proportion that are dying of the child pedestrians who are recorded as injured in road accidents is 0.4%. And the reason that it's not 20% with vehicles going at 30 miles an hour is because drivers slow down in areas of danger and they brake before impact. And those behaviours are vital, life-saving behaviours that we should be encouraging and building upon, rather than the stick to the speed limit thing. That's only got a marginal opportunity for effect because we're not slamming into children or pedestrians or other road users at speed limit speeds. We slow down where there are hazards, we brake before impact, and those behaviours are just so important. And of course, if we're staring at our speedo when it all goes wrong ahead, we won't even start to brake. And that's a worrying factor.
That's what I was referring to when I said we're driving along constantly looking for a little yellow backed box.
Yeah.
Now that's rather quaint and old fashioned, because we're looking now at devices which measure your speed over a quarter of a mile or half a mile, aren't we?
Yeah, we find these a lot on motorway roadworks these days. Interestingly, the government's research says that speed cameras in motorway roadworks increase accidents. Are you hearing that? They increase accidents. Fixed speed cameras increase accidents by, wait for it, 55%, according to the government's own research.
Well, I was regularly making a trip up the M1 and coming back about 11 o'clock at night.
Yep.
And going through one section, southbound on the M1, where roadworks were in operation. And I think pretty much every night I went through this section, which was about 2 miles long. 2-3 cars would get caught, or would trigger off a light reaction. So that's not at odds with what you've said to me. Why is there no association take-up with you and one of the major car clubs like the AA or the RAC?
Well, we're a sort of research-based pressure group, which is not the sort of thing that Department for Transport appears to be used to dealing with, but they're going to have to, and they are. I was on the radio with Stephen Ladyman, Roads Minister, just a few days ago, and the only answer he's got is, we don't take the Safe Speed Organisation seriously. That's because he can't meet the arguments. His department is institutionally incapable of understanding the process of safe driving at the moment, and if they're going to determine road safety policy, that's something that they've got to get a grip on, because that's where it starts. It starts with what road users have to do in order to be safe.
Didn't he just get caught speeding recently?
He had 9 points on his licence, but I do believe they've all expired. He says he's a reformed character.
Yeah, I said that once, and I stopped dandruff overnight.
Quite.
I got a call from Tony, who's in Liverpool. He wants to have a word with you before you leave us. Tony.
Hiya.
Hi, Tony.
All right.
I've got Paul Smith here and the suit.
I made up that this fella's on, because I really need this fella at the minute. I'm a taxi driver here in Liverpool, and as you can appreciate, my driving licence is my worldly goods.
Absolutely.
Now, I employ a fella that works during the day, and he got done for speeding out in Blackpool somewhere, and I've because I'm the registered keeper of the cab, I've actually got the notice asking me to furnish details of the driver of the cab.
Yeah.
Now, we have a magazine called Taxi Talk, which sort of like gives some little bits of law and all this business, and one of which is quite interesting in this is something legislation under the Human Rights Act to the rights of silence.
Yes.
Now, I'm under the impression that if I fill this form in, surely you're innocent until proven guilty. Right, and if I fill a form in to say that who was driving this vehicle, that person's pleaded guilty without even getting any sort of caution.
The way this procedure works is they initially send a notice to the owner of the vehicle.
Yeah.
When you get that notice, you have a legal obligation to reply to it.
Yeah.
But do everyone a favour and take the time that they give you. So, if it's a 28-day notice, take 27 days, then send it back by recorded delivery. You must, the way the law stands at the moment, you must reply to that notice, and if you don't, you commit an offence. At the moment, from what you've described, someone else was driving the vehicle, you've committed no offence, and so long as you give them that information within the time required, 28 days, and ideally on the 28th day, you will be completely in the clear. Now, following that procedure, they will send a similar notice to the guy that you say was driving.
Yeah.
And he will then have to fill that form in, and presumably at that point he will declare that he was driving the vehicle at the time of the alleged offence. And at that point there's a very serious right to silence issue that kicks in. And there's a right to silence court case going on, which is going to be heard in the European Court of Human Rights at Strasbourg at the end of September this year.
Right.
We think everything's going to change when that case is, when the judgment is given in that case, which will be sometime after the hearing. And we think UK government's going to lose. We think the procedure that they're using to get details of the driver at the time of the offence does involve a violation of the right to silence, and we might see some quite drastic changes at that time.
Right. Well, when you go to court for a speeding offence, and you've got the prosecution there, and am I entitled before entering a plea to say I want to see your evidence?
Yes, there's a process called disclosure, and under disclosure, any evidence that hasn't been supplied to the defence 7 days before the trial should not be admitted in the court. So if you write to the Crown Prosecution Service and demand that they disclose the evidence that's against you 7 days before the trial, and they fail to do so, you can ask for the case to be dismissed.
Yeah, but is a trial when you enter a plea, or is a trial when after you've entered the plea?
A trial is when the case is heard. I mean, there could be any number of adjournments before a trial takes place, and quite often there's a court case which is called a pre-trial review, where they determine what resources have to be allocated to the case. But we are talking about the trial, when the evidence is heard.
Good luck to you. Thanks very much, Tony. Thank you. I had an interesting email, well, I've got quite a few actually, triggered by yourself, Paul. I blame you entirely on this.
I'm really sorry.
That's all right. This is from George Glenn. Hello, George. George said he was fined for going past a speed camera doing 41 miles an hour on a dual carriageway at 1:05 in the morning. He said, I remember this camera was erected shortly after a nursing home for the elderly had been built. Less than half a mile away, the limit rises again to 40 miles an hour, so I assume that they must have been doing 41 on a dual carriageway. No, it wouldn't be anything. It's a dual carriageway, so he would be perfectly all right to do 60 unless specified otherwise. So you wouldn't have a dual carriageway with a speed limit of 30, would you?
Afraid we do. Quite a lot of them, actually, these days.
Oh, yes. Going into Southend in Essex.
Yeah.
That long straight stretch.
Yeah, quite a lot of them. You see, the idea is, and we've had this idea floating around for a decade now, if vehicles are going slower, we'll have fewer crashes. Shame it hasn't worked. Let's have a policy that works, please.
I can remember when I first started driving, I was pulled up by a cop going along Piccadilly, not in Manchester, but Piccadilly in London. And he said, why are you driving so slowly? I said, I was doing 30. He said, well, nobody else is. Come on, hurry up.
Absolutely. And those days were sensible, you know, because the important thing, it is actually terribly important that nobody drives too fast. Trouble is, the speed limit doesn't tell us what too fast is. We can't tell what too fast is unless we know what the circumstances are. If 30 miles an hour on Piccadilly at a quiet time was too slow and a police officer observed it to be so, well, that was probably perfectly sensible. The speed limit doesn't tell you what the safety is. It's matching speed to the circumstance that tells you what the safety is. And it always will. And that, of course, spotlights the fundamental flaw in the idea of having these speed limiters. If we tell drivers that the speed limiter will take control using a satellite and a digital map of the entire road network, it knows where the speed limits are. If we tell drivers that the satellite will take control and all they have to do to be safe is to stick their foot on the floor and let the satellite sort out the speed of the vehicle, there would be utter carnage. I think the fact is that if we go down that path, people will find under many circumstances that the limiter will limit their speed. That means that they know that they could have been driving safely, slightly faster maybe than the speed limit that's imposed by the limiter. So they got the foot on the floor, knowing that they could go a bit faster. The satellite's got a hold of the speed control of the car and they're not going faster. Now what happens when they come to a hazard? Are they going to slow down as quickly as a driver who is in full control of the vehicle, or are they just going to sit there on the limiter until it's a little bit too late? And you know, I think they're going to sit there on the limiter. We're going to see zombie drivers. If we ever go down this path, we're going to see zombie drivers who trust the limiter to set the speed of the vehicle. Now, how barking is that?
Well, when the cruise control broke on my car so long ago, it was a horse and cart. There was a part of me that re-engaged with motorway driving, because otherwise I just flicked it on and I'll see you at Liverpool, you know.
Yes. So I think, if you are in a sort of a motorway situation, then there are some benefits in having a cruise control, particularly if you're a sort of an active driver and you override it. Go a little bit faster when you're overtaking other vehicles to limit the time that you're exposed to sideswipe, that sort of thing. A little bit slower when someone's dithering around in front of you. In sort of urban situations, more complex environments, it's actually much more difficult, and the idea of having people who are trusting the satellite in those environments is really very scary.
Going back to George Glenn's question, it's relating this camera was erected near a nursing home for the elderly had been built. Less than half a mile away, the limit went back up to 40. Is there somewhere people can go to find out the current state of play if they're making a journey? I'm aware that some of the sat-nav equipment now gives you a readout as to what you can expect the speed limit to be. But it can be changed, and where might one find the information that it's changed?
Well, it's very important that speed limits are signed properly in accordance with the regulations. In fact, if speed limits aren't signed properly in accordance with the regulations, and there are thousands that aren't, then the law says no one should be convicted of exceeding that speed limit. So this is one of the golden opportunities if you want to fight that ticket. Was the speed limit at the site in question signed in accordance with the regulations? And often it wasn't. So the information that drivers receive regards speed limit fundamentally comes from roadside signs. But of course there are these devices which know where speed cameras and speed limits are, based on global positioning system by satellite GPS, which you can buy for, I don't know, £60 up to about £400, which will warn you of the approach of a speed camera. So,
listen, Steve wants to ask you a question. I've got an email from him. Pete, are you there?
I am.
Okay, Pete, listen, I've got a little jobby to do here, and when I've done that, I'm going to be right back with Paul Smith, okay?
Okay, mate.
Okay. This is talkSPORT. I'm Mike Allen. Good morning. To be part of the programme this morning, and we are enjoying the insight from Paul Smith that others only crave for. I hope this isn't going to your head, Paul.